The Galactic Conclave Station Theta 9 floated in the dark between stars like a jeweled insect, its rings spinning slowly, its docking bays humming with the traffic of 47 civilizations. Species from every corner of the mapped galaxy walked its corridors. The tall, pale Veth with their translucent skin and clicking mandibles, the rolling, gaseous Muran contained in their pressure suits, the six-limbed Dracari who never touched the floor. And then there were humans. 2 of them stood in Docking Bay 7 right now, which was precisely why Commander Vorith of the Dracari Imperial Fleet was in a poor mood. Riker was the taller one, broad across the shoulders in the particular way that made xenobiologists nervous, not the bulk of the Dracari warrior caste, which was heavy with carapace and calcified muscle, but something different, something compressed. He stood with the relaxed stillness of a creature that had learned, generations ago, that the universe would come to it. His uniform bore the patch of the Terran Diplomatic Escort Corps, which was the galaxy's polite way of saying heavily armed problem solvers who smile while doing it. The other human was Naira. She was leaning against their cargo crate with her arms folded, watching Commander Vorith the way a raptor watches something small moving in tall grass, patient, precise, and utterly without urgency. Vorith had 4 arms. He was using all of them to gesture. "The manifest," he said through his translator bead, his upper limbs fanning wide with bureaucratic authority, "is incomplete. The Terran vessel will remain impounded until the Conclave reviews the discrepancy. This process takes 40 standard days," Riker said pleasantly. "We know. You've said it 3 times. Then you understand. We're on a medical run." Naira's voice was flat, factual, carrying no particular heat. "The cargo is cellular regeneration compound. It's bound for the Marish colony on Kel 4. You've seen the colony report. 47,000 civilians. Plague response." Vorith's secondary eyes, the smaller pair below his primary set, flicked to the manifest on his scanner. He had seen the colony report. He had, in fact, read it twice. But the Dracari Imperial Fleet had a particular relationship with Terran vessels that had soured considerably over the last decade, and Commander Vorith had specific instructions from Admiral Keth about making the humans aware of their place in the new Conclave hierarchy. Besides, there was an audience. The bay was busy. Other captains, dock workers, a cluster of Veth merchants. Vorith was a creature who understood the value of performance. He stepped forward. He placed one large, 4-fingered hand flat against Riker's chest and pushed. It was not a violent push. It was the push of a being who outranked you, reminding you of that fact through the oldest language in the galaxy. "Move. You are beneath me. Move." Riker moved exactly 1 centimeter. Then he stopped. Vorith had time to register this. The strange, geological quality of the resistance, like pushing against a wall that had simply decided not to be a wall anymore, before Riker's hand closed around his wrist. 5 seconds. That was all. 5 seconds that the surveillance footage would later be reviewed, re-reviewed, and distributed across 14 diplomatic channels with increasingly urgent subject lines. In those 5 seconds, Riker did not strike Commander Vorith. He did not throw him. He did not do any of the things that Dracari warriors were trained to do in close-quarters engagement, which involved a great deal of carapace impact and secondary claw deployment. He simply held the wrist. And then he rotated it. The Dracari skeleton was built for 4-limbed striking, for the overhead reach of a species that had evolved climbing the mineral towers of Drakvel. Their wrist joints had remarkable outward flexibility. Vorith could, and frequently did, fold his lower arms behind his back at angles that made other species flinch. What they did not have was inward rotation. The joint simply was not built for it. Centuries of xenobiological data, freely available in any galactic medical database, clearly documented this fact. Riker knew this fact. He applied approximately 43% of his grip strength. Naira would later calculate this from the security footage, with the focused interest of someone who found the math genuinely entertaining, and rotated the commander's wrist inward, slowly, steadily, with the patience of a species that had spent 10,000 years opening jars. The sound Vorith made was not a scream, exactly. It was the vocalization of a being who had just learned something profound and unwanted about the architecture of their own body. He went to his knees. All 4 of them. The bay went quiet. Not the dramatic silence of a held breath, The absolute silence of 40 beings from 23 species simultaneously performing the same calculation and arriving at the same answer. The answer was, oh. Riker looked down at the commander with an expression of mild, professional interest, the way a maintenance technician looks at a fixture that has stopped working correctly. My cargo, he said. Release, Vorith started. Riker rotated another 3 degrees. My cargo, he said again. Same tone, same volume. The word please was not present, but it was there in the subtext, the way that thunder is present in the moment before it arrives. Released, Vorith gasped. The cargo is released. Riker let go. Vorith scrambled upright, clutching his wrist to his chest, his dignity distributed somewhere on the floor of docking bay 7 in pieces too small to collect. His secondary eyes were doing something his translator bead could not convey, a rapid, involuntary cycling that, in Dracari body language, indicated the complete suspension of previously held beliefs. Naira had already moved to the cargo authorization terminal. She scanned their credentials with the efficient speed of someone who had been waiting patiently for this moment and saw no reason to prolong it now. The terminal chimed. Green. She looked at Vorith, then at the wrist he was cradling. You'll want to ice that, she said. Probably not broken. Humans overestimate how fragile their grip makes things. She paused. Usually, the footage, as these things always did, spread. Not through official channels, at first. Those came later, with their formal language and their careful diplomatic phrasing. It spread the way things spread in the modern galaxy, through dockworker feeds and merchant networks and the particular enthusiasm of a species called the Plavari, who had 17 words for schadenfreude and operated the galaxy's most reliable gossip infrastructure. By the next morning, 17 million beings had watched a Terran crewman bring a Dracari commander to 4 knees with one hand and no particular expression. The comments, translated into Terran standard by a cultural exchange algorithm that was clearly working very hard, included. He barely tried. The female was watching him the way my clutch mother watches prey. Why does the human look bored? The human looks bored. How is the human bored? I have reviewed the joint anatomy. I understand what happened. I wish I did not understand what happened. The Dracari Imperial Fleet released an official statement describing the incident as a regrettable miscommunication resolved diplomatically. Admiral Keth was not available for comment. Commander Vorith was reassigned to a posting that did not involve Terran vessels, or, as a precaution, Terrans in general. On the Kel 4 approach corridor, 3 days later, Riker was running a systems check when Naira dropped into the co-pilot seat with 2 cups of something hot. The conclave flagged us, she said. Diplomatic incident. Low priority. Yeah. 47,000 doses delivered. Yeah. Naira drank her cup. Outside the viewport, the colony world was a green-brown curve against the dark, its orbital stations blinking their welcome. Emergency frequencies had gone quiet 2 days ago. The plague response was working. He put his hand on you, she said. It was not a question, and it was not an accusation. It was the verbal notation of a fact, the way you might say the math checked out. He did, Riker agreed. Humans don't like that. No. Naira watched the planet get larger. She had been on 6 colony crisis runs with Riker. She had watched him negotiate with warlords, sit patiently through 18-hour diplomatic sessions, eat food that had caused other species' biosuits to alert, and sleep through turbulence that rattled cargo crates loose from their moorings. She had watched him be genuinely, stubbornly, infuriatingly calm in situations that the rest of the galaxy would have classified as unsurvivable. She had also watched him pick up a Dracari commander by the wrist and explain gravity to him. You could have just waited, she said. The manifest would have cleared eventually. 47,000 people. Right. He put his hand on me. Right. Riker finished his systems check. The planet filled the viewport now, and somewhere down there, 47,000 people were breathing easier, and a Dracari commander was icing his wrist, and the galaxy was quietly updating its file on what Terrans were, and what they were not, and what it cost to find out the difference. Nice flying, by the way, Naira said. You flew most of it. I know, she said. I'm being generous. Outside, the stars held still and watched, the way the universe always watches the small hinge moments, the instance when something shifts, and what was assumed to be true turns out to have a wrist joint and a grip and a human being at the end of it who had 47,000 reasons and one personal one, and had simply decided that today was the day.